Okay, so you're a manager. You make a ton of decisions every single day. But have you ever stopped to think that one of them, maybe even a casual joke, could land you and your company in some serious legal trouble? Well, today we're going to dive right into that legal minefield. We're talking about workplace torts.
So could a simple mistake really lead to a lawsuit? The answer is absolutely. And it's a reality that, honestly, catches a lot of managers completely off guard. Now, we're not talking about the obvious stuff, like breaking a contract or committing a crime. This is a whole different beast, a category of legal risk that can pop up from just normal, everyday interactions at work. And that's where this idea of torts comes in. It's a specific category of civil wrongs. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a minefield. And as a manager, you've got to know how to navigate it really, really carefully to protect not just your company, but yourself too.
Okay, so what makes a tort a tort? This is a really key point. Crimes, those are wrongs against the state, right? Torts, on the other hand, are all about disputes between private individuals or companies. The whole idea is that the law basically says we all have certain duties to each other. And if you violate one of those duties and cause harm, well, that's where you can get into hot water.
So let's drill down on this. It's super important to get this straight. A tort is not a crime. And it's not a breach of contract. It's its own thing. But here's the kicker. It can be just as damaging to your company and, to your career.
So when you look at the definition, a couple of things really jump out. Private wrong and remedy. See, this isn't about going to jail. It's about money. It's about compensation. If a manager does something that causes harm, the whole goal of the court is to try and make that person whole again, usually by making the company pay up in financial damages.
This chart really lays it out perfectly. A crime, that's a wrong against society as a whole. Breaking a contract, that's basically a broken promise between two parties. But a tort, that's something else entirely. It's about violating a fundamental duty that the law says we all owe to everyone else. Pretty much the duty to just act with reasonable care.
Okay, enough with the theory, right? How does this stuff actually show up in the workplace? Let's get practical and look at 3 of the most common torts that managers, just like you, are likely to run into. All right, first on the list, assault and battery. Now, you might be thinking of something really serious, but you'd be surprised at how low the legal bar is here. What you might just call workplace banter or harmless horsing around can, boom, cross the line into a lawsuit before you even know it. And here's the thing that trips people up. For a battery claim, all it takes is offensive contact. That's it. You don't actually have to hurt someone. A friendly tap on the shoulder is probably fine. But an unwanted pat on the back, if a reasonable person would find that offensive, that's technically a battery. An assault? That's even easier. You don't even have to touch them. It's just making someone afraid that you're about to. Just think about it for a second. That office prank that just goes a little bit too far. You might have meant it as a joke, but if it ends in contact that someone finds offensive, well, you've just stepped right on one of those legal landmines we were talking about. Okay, next up is something called false imprisonment. And this is a really big deal for any business that interacts with the public. I'm looking at you, retail and security managers. It's all about what happens when you think someone might be doing something wrong, like shoplifting. What this torts is really protecting is a super basic right, or freedom to move around. And get this. Confinement doesn't mean you have to lock someone in a room. A threat, or even just an intimidating presence that makes a person feel like they can't leave, that's enough. And it doesn't have to be for a long time. Even a few minutes could be illegal. Now, the law isn't totally unreasonable. There is a small exception called the shopkeeper's privilege. It says, yes, you can detain someone if you have a reasonable suspicion they're stealing. But, and this is a huge but, everything about that detention has to be reasonable. The reason you suspect them, the way you detain them, and how long you hold them for. If you go overboard on any of those 3 things, that legal protection just disappears. All right, our third and final tort is a big one, especially today. It's called intentional infliction of emotional distress, or IIED. This one isn't about physical harm at all. It's purely about severe emotional damage. And with all the focus now on mental health and positive workplace culture, you can see why this is so important.
Now, I gotta tell you, the bar for this one is set really, really high. We're not talking about just being rude or having a bad day. The conduct has to be extreme and outrageous. A good way to think about it is the gasp test. If you told a random person on the street what happened and they gasped and said, "Oh my God, that's just beyond the pale," then you might be in IED territory. It's basically the law's way of dealing with the absolute worst kind of workplace bullying.
And this is such a critical point for every manager to understand.
You could have a perfectly legal reason to fire someone, but it's how you do it that can land you in trouble. If you fire someone in a way that's designed to be abusive or humiliating, mocking them in front of everyone, that's when a perfectly legal termination can suddenly turn into a lawsuit for emotional distress.
Okay, so we've walked through the minefield, we've seen where the dangers are. Now for the most important part. How do you get through it without blowing up? The truth is, the best defense is a really good offense. Think of these 4 steps as your roadmap to safety. First, have clear ways for people to report problems. Second, train everybody. Third, investigate every single complaint seriously. And fourth, build a culture of respect. But look, this isn't just about checking off legal boxes to cover your bases. This is about creating a workplace that's healthier, safer, and frankly, more productive for everyone. It turns out that good legal practice is just good management. And all of that really leads us to the single most powerful shield you have. It's something that's way more effective than any policy manual or legal document you could ever write. This quote from Lord Mansfield really nails it, doesn't it? To protect the weak from the abuse and insults of the strong. That's the whole point of tort law, and it's such a powerful reminder that being a manager isn't just about hitting targets and enforcing rules. It's about protecting your people. It's about maintaining a basic standard of human decency. And you know what? That's really the bottom line here. Avoiding these legal nightmares isn't about becoming a lawyer or memorizing a bunch of statutes. It's about being intentional. It's about building a culture of genuine respect, a place where nasty, abusive behavior just can't survive. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Right now, is your company culture your biggest risk, or is it your greatest shield?